Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, the big game is in the books. Congratulations to Super Bowl champs, 59 champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, winning 40-22. This is the team's second title after beating the New England Patriots in 2018.
It was an unbelievable game.
It was awesome.
Yeah, so proud of them. So proud of Philly. For sure. Well, the Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni gave credit to the Lord for the victory, saying, "God's blessed us very much. He gave us all the talents to be able to get here. So first and foremost, that's thanks to him. First and foremost, thanks to him." Well, reporters also spoke with the quarterbacks from both teams, and here's what they had to say.
Jesus is my Lord and Savior. It's someone that I look up to every single day to decide what I want to do with my life and how I want to live my life. And so Jesus is everything to me.
And my faith has always been a part of me where I've always wanted to root myself in that and keep him in the center of my life and everything that I do. And so, you know, through the highs and the lows, he's greater than all of them. And that's something that I can always acknowledge and always lean on and remember.
Well, a little humility mixed with courage there, I'd say.
And do you know that more than 120 million people watched the Super Bowl?
It's a pretty big church, right? Yeah.
Very big church, and it's great what they had to say.
Well, in just a minute, our Morning Light panel will tackle some of these topics and more. We'll go behind the headlines.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. My conversation with the chaplain for the Philadelphia Eagles continues. Hear how he was called to be a pastor, and learn how a Pennsylvania coach and Morning Light panelist shares the gospel with his players.
That's John Wetzel, of course, and it's an awesome. Both of these interviews are awesome. Yeah. Well, after months of meticulous planning, one of the nation's biggest security events went off without a major incident, including a historic appearance by President Donald Trump. Going beyond the game, we'll ask the Morning Light panel to rate the national anthem, the halftime show, and of course, the ads, which was your favorite. And how did America look to a watching world? There's 120 million people around the world.
Yeah, I didn't even watch the halftime show.
I thought we did well last night. I thought as a country, we looked good to the outside.
Yeah.
We'll see if the panel agrees.
Well, did you see the NFL's 2-minute star-studded ad for women's flag football aimed to get audiences to think differently about the league? I didn't see that one either.
Are you going to sign up for women's flag football?
Not anytime soon, but with football being the most popular American sport, what part of the NFL image are they trying to fix, and what's behind the strategy?
Well, it's a pretty interesting strategy, that with exhibition games in Europe and South America. The NFL's making a big play, and we'll see what they think of what's happening. Well, speaking of brand strategies, the organization formerly known as the Boy Scouts is officially Scouting America. Well, they're not changing the oath to God and country and the Scout law. The name change is part of a larger plan to overcome years of scandal and controversy. Have the Scouts found their way, or are they still wandering in the wilderness? We'll take these questions to the Morning Light panel this morning, and it is a well-equipped panel. Luke, Covert, glad to have you back. Did you have an ad in the Super Bowl last night?
I did. I had a
You're an ad
regional
filmmaker?
ad, yeah.
Our audience
If you saw a grandma dunking a basketball,
was that your idea?
That was the ad I directed. Yeah.
You thought it was a good idea to have grandma dunk him?
I thought it was the best idea. Yeah.
All right. How did they find the ad? How do we find the ad if we see it online?
I mean, I think if you search OSS Health,
okay.
You know, if you search the best Super Bowl ad from last night, it'll be at the top of the list for sure. So.
Davis Younts, glad to have you back, fresh off defending American heroes from courtrooms around the country. Good to have you here.
Thanks, brother.
And Dan Bartkowiak, good to have you from the Pennsylvania Family Institute. It's been a while. We had you early on in the Morning Light history, and glad to have you back. Let me start with you. How do you think overall, I mean, we usually come out with a big impression of the Super Bowl the night before or the day after, and it's usually something about a wardrobe malfunction or something that happened that did not happen on the field. Overall, the tone, the tenor, the pageantry, the Super Bowl, how did we do?
I think certainly here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of happy fans. So that it's nice to see the victory, brought to Pennsylvania. My roots are in Buffalo, so I was somewhat happy seeing the Eagles beat the Chiefs.
Sure.
But there was also, even watching through, my kids, stayed up for the whole thing, and even the ads didn't get too political. There was kind of even a connection of just trying to be more family friendly, looking to be more home-like. And so there was definitely kind of a breath of fresh air. I was
Favorite
glad that favorite ad would have been, I think, the Rocket Mortgage, saying, Country
sure.
Roads,
Yes.
got your attention.
And everybody was singing Country
right,
Roads.
and everybody's singing it,
Yeah.
and it's just had a pro-life message, appreciation of military. I mean, it just kind of, people can connect with that. There was an authenticity to it that I think was a breath of fresh air.
Beautiful. So you're a veteran. From the opening to the close, a lot of flags woven in, the national anthem, you had America the Beautiful in there, you had Lift Every Voice and Sing. Your thoughts on how we looked to the world last night, just from a marketing of America standpoint?
No, I think it looked like a nation that people were proud of again, and I don't think we've always seen that culturally over the last few years. So I think that was my biggest takeaway. Even the halftime show, weaving in the flag and Uncle Sam and just patriotic elements throughout, it just felt like there was a country that knew something about itself, knew something about its culture, and there was
the DNA of America.
The DNA with America was present.
Yeah, and it wasn't all conservative messaging. It wasn't like we just tilted in one direction or the other. That was clear, from the halftime show.
Right.
But it was a little less, perhaps, raunchy, maybe, than in years past.
Absolutely, unless you understand all the lyrics, but
Right.
but just the appearance of it was definitely less.
My
raunchy.
son and I were listening to it on the drive back from youth group, and we were. I didn't explain all of the implications of the lyrics. What do you think?
About which part?
I mean, you're the filmmaker here,
Sure.
so you're looking at this, cinematically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always a little cheese and cornball element to a Super Bowl, but as Marco Rubio said, it's becoming kind of our national branding event for America. How do we look?
I think I agree. It was more united, more of like a country celebrating something. My personal belief is that the Super Bowl commercials are like 12-sided Rubik's Cubes now. It's just like a little bit too much. Like it's almost become it almost looks like a Saturday Night Live version of Super Bowl commercials.
A lot of
Just an
celebrity.
aside. Yeah, it's just like, whoa, I can't even look at that. It's like you're shining bright lights in my eyes. And then so when someone does something really like sleek or like simple, like the pizza rolls commercial or something, where it's just funny for 30 seconds.
What about Harrison Ford?
That's
Did
cool.
you like anybody like the Harrison Ford ad?
No, not at all.
I almost cried at that one.
Oh, sorry.
Am I
did
out
like
of it?
that. Just kidding.
But so is it too much celebrity, too much AI? Just are we on overload? Is this kind of symptomatic of the way the culture is overall?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I think they pitched it as like entertainment, Super Bowl commercials. Some people are like, I only watch for the Super Bowl commercials, and brands heard that and now they're like, great, we're going to make them each
That's
their
how you
own
make a
cinematic
pitch,
universe or something. And
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to stay with you in this. The NFL put a 2-minute ad together to introduce us to women's flag football. Your thoughts on that? Did they hit the mark? Is it a market they're trying to create to check a box, or is there a marketplace demand, you think, for, especially after coming off of major controversies relative to transports and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in, for one, that was a long commercial, so it was a huge statement.
Right.
If one commercial is $8 million or something crazy, that's like a lot of money.
Plus production.
Plus production, yeah, for sure. I'm always curious to know whether they're trying to cold start the chainsaw and there's no ground support. You know what I mean? Like whether they're forcing this thing through.
That's a beautiful phrase.
Yeah.
Cold,
Or whether that, because I've done so much woodwork in my life. But no, or whether there's like support and they're just pushing behind something that people already want.
Right.
I do like the fact that we might not be stuck with the same sports for the next 600 years of American history. So that's cool to me.
Yeah.
But there was it's like, for instance, there's like grassroots pickleball things and now there's places everywhere. And they didn't really need to do a 2-minute commercial for us. I'm just curious to see. I'd at least give it a shot.
Quick take?
I think I'm always skeptical of trying to elevate young women by emphasizing that in order to be successful as a young woman, you have to be like a young man.
Oh, interesting.
And that was the theme. And so it was embarrassing the young men and being like, oh, the girls are better at this than the men. So I don't have a problem.
Men are stuck in the 80s.
I don't have a problem with women's sports. I think women's sports are amazing, and I think flag football for high school girls would be a ton of fun. I think that's a great idea. But I don't think you have to humiliate the men, because the message you're sending to young ladies is you have to be better men in order to achieve something better. And I thought we had started to move past that and recognize women for who they are and the beauty they bring.
That's a better answer. I'm really sorry.
And any red flags on flag football?
Well, I think again, it's celebrating women and women's sports. You know, we have, sadly, like there was this week, Riley Gaines and at the White House celebrating to try to protect women in their own sports, and that should be celebrated. So we have too many attacks, I think, on just the ability to celebrate women for who they are and the accomplishments they can make. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to celebrate that fact.
Okay, we're down to the last couple minutes here. I do want to get to the rebrand, which happened a lot of things happened over the weekend and this morning. Getting rid of the penny and a few other things, but one story that may have slipped off the radar is the official rebranding of the Boy Scouts. Another area where Boy Scouts are saying we're going to try to be more inclusive. Girls have been a part of the scouting process for a while in different ways, but this is much bolder. Your initial thoughts on
the initial
rebrand?
Thought, when you take boys out of Boy Scouts, you know, when it comes to the exclusivity of this event, I was a Cub Scout growing up, and I learned how to, you know, fold a flag and use a pocket knife. And there's a need to show young boys how to be young men, how to lead. And when you bring girls into the picture, that's a whole different environment. And so I think there's a need to have something like
as a dad of boys and girls.
As a dad of boys and girls. So Trail Life USA is something that I appreciate because it's training young men with men leading.
Your thoughts on this? Scouting starts out with this very overt Christian message, which is from the founding on. It was Christianity applied in real life. God is still there, but it is in kind of up to the Scoutmaster's interpretation of what that means. Do you think that they're off the mark? Are they getting back to the mark of their Christian roots?
I think they're off the mark, and again, it was mistakes that they made in not protecting children that are part of the scandal that they're in, and they didn't hold true to those values because they didn't do the background checks they were supposed to be doing, and they didn't hold true to the values they were saying. So they made mistakes and they tried to cover it up. So they're still paying for that. So I don't think this is going to help. I think it's a dying organization.
Final word goes to you. Any disagreement?
If you want to get young men to learn how to build fires, don't distract them with girls.
Interesting. Yeah,
I was a Boy Scout for a lot of years, and there was something I never even thought about it, but like, you know, there were camp counselors at summer camp who were girls. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they were older and whatever. It's just like it changes the whole thing, and I think it's a fine switch. I'm not mad that they are letting girls in at all, actually, because there's always going to be other boys-only things, but it does change what it's about quite dramatically. I think if we're just looking at they're distracting for young men.
Gentlemen, thank you. This is very, very helpful, and we'll continue on many of these topics, and you'll be back tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, coming up on Morning Light, we introduce you to Ted Winsley, the chaplain for the Philadelphia Eagles last week. Deborah will continue her conversation with him about how God led him to become a pastor. You're watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs for their second title, and right there with them was their chaplain. And Deborah, you spoke with the pastor earlier this week.
That is right. Well, the chaplain of the Philadelphia Eagles is the pastor at the Family Church in Voorhees, New Jersey. It's about 20 minutes away from the stadium. Pastor Ted Winsley, thank you so much for being with us.
It's an honor to be here. Why
don't you talk to us about how you were led to the church? What was God's calling?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I was 17 years old. I'm the baby of 5. I come from a religious family. We were Waco United Methodist Church is where my father was in the Air Force. And so we went to church, but I really didn't have a relationship, if that makes any sense. And at 17 years old, I was at home around Christmas time, and I'm watching PBS. And there was a gospel explosion that came on, and I happened to just start watching the television, and a man named Daryl Coley started to sing Sovereign. And, you know, that's not even a song that a 17-year-old would be interested in. And I kind of got pulled into the song. And the song goes, Sovereign, who am I to question God's wisdom? Who am I to question what God allows to be? For I realize that God is the sovereign, that God is sovereign. And it only happened to me twice in my life. I heard God's voice. And God said to me, I've called you to pastor. He said it 3 times. And it felt like it came out of my ears. And by the 3rd time, I'm weeping, you know, and I'm looking around. My family members are behind me. I said, does anybody hear this? And after I stopped crying, I said, I think God just told me I'm going to be a pastor.
So then after you were a pastor, then you became the chaplain of the
Yes.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Sure.
What an honor. How did that happen?
So I went on to have a corporate career. I was national sales manager for FUBU. And then my pastor in Pensacola, New Jersey, Pastor Lamont McLean, asked me to come full-time and to leave corporate America and my six-figure job to take a pay cut and to be over, the ministry was pretty large, to be over broadcast, marketing, branding, and I said yes. And so the very first thing that happened was that Troy Vincent, who was a football player for the Eagles, he's actually now right underneath the commissioner. He saw Pastor Lamont on television, reached out to the church and asked him to do Bible studies. And so I was his assistant. I carried the Bibles. I set up the microphone. I allowed him to make fun of me so he could connect with the players, because the players at that time were closer to my age than his. I was 30. Many of the players were 28, 25, 26. And after about a year doing that, Pastor Lamont looked at me and said, I'm not supposed to be doing this. You are. 23 years later.
Wow. Tell us, what is your life verse?
Sure.
And how do you share that with the coaches, with the players?
My life verse is Jeremiah 1:5. Before you were formed in your mother's belly, I knew you. Before you came out of the womb, I had already sanctified you and called you a prophet to the nations. And then, of course, it goes on and it says, don't be afraid of their faces, and I'm going to put my word into your mouth, and you're going to do what I tell you to do.
How does it make you feel after a game with football, with all kinds of sports? You see people pointing up to God, kneeling down, praying.
Sure.
What better way to share and spread the gospel?
Yeah, it for me, and I would say the greatest demonstration of that for me, and some people have commented that the 2017 season, when we won the Super Bowl, some people say that they've never seen a greater demonstration of faith on a professional level than what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles, where the coach, first thing he said is, I want to give honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The players were, quoting scripture and giving God glory, and realizing, as I say in the book, that you don't win the game in the game, you win it in practice. So we won the Super Bowl in 2017, but 2016 was the year that the players dedicated their lives, went through, great tragedy and overcame obstacles. And I don't know if you remember, we did the water baptisms. And if you look, there's a bald-headed black guy. That was me. So then to see all of that and helping guys to navigate through those certain things that happened, and then to realize that, wow, again, Jeremiah 1:5, that God had the view from the end zone, and then seeing guys get it and give God glory. It's what it's about.
In our conversation, Pastor Ted made reference to a book. It turns out he is also an author. He wrote this book, View from the End Zone, and just looking at it, this is a very interesting quote. God led you into the wilderness to kill your wrong identity and to reveal your true identity.
It's just a lot more depth, I think, with this pastor and this collection of Philadelphia Eagles, talking about loss and the wilderness, that there's purpose in suffering to produce the character that God wants out of us. What a difference from just the lucky charm that people think faith is. This is really about faith for the hard days and the valleys.
That is for sure. And he does have another book coming out, and that's scheduled to be released sometime in September. Well, coming up next on Morning Light, he's a regular Morning Light panelist, but he also coaches high school football. I talked to John Wetzel about his faith shapes his outlook both on and off the field. We are back in 1 minute. Welcome back. Learning the game of life. John Wetzel is a regular panelist here on Morning Light, but he also helps coach high school football players, teaching them faith-filled lifelong lessons both on and off the field. Earlier, I spoke with John. So talk to us about your role as a coach.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite job. Job would be strong because I volunteer. But it's really, certainly there's the on-field part. I love football. I love coaching linemen, big kids. And I love the strategy and all that stuff. But it's as much about mentoring and helping young men primarily, although we had a female, the head coach's daughter actually was all conference. Shout out to Sarah Miller. But it's really about helping people develop in this game of football, which is a lot like life. There's challenges and all this stuff. And with football, it's impossible to win unless your focus is on your teammates and helping them do better, which is, the Christian love your neighbors first. I mean, so it's the perfect game to coach life, in my opinion.
How do you weave the gospel into your coaching?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things let me start with what I do poorly, which is, looking like a Christian all the time. It's an intense game. So if you saw me from the sideline, the question is, if you saw me from the bleachers, would I look like a Christian? I don't all the time. So I got to lead with that. But it really is, it's capturing those moments where you teach the lessons. And in some ways, when people know your faith and lead with your faith, it's assumed to be a Christian lesson. And then and we have a very active fellowship of Christian athletes. We have a lot of students. We do a lot of Bible study. And so when it's kids who are really engaged in that, it is the perfect vehicle, either on the field or, in a lot of times, a lot of our kids are dealing with stuff. It's increase in children who are in foster care, children who are maybe in challenging circumstances. They don't have a lot of places that they can get their pro-social supports. That's what these athletic programs are, and that's what this community that Coach Miller created is. And that's really what it's really the opportunity to really show what Christianity living today is. And that's really loving your neighbor and helping them and then helping the next generation develop to be the people we need to take care of us, at least me as I age.
Well, and it seems you're seeing more and more athletes, proclaiming their faith. And I think that is so important.
I mean, every successful football program I've been involved in, college, high school, there's been a Christian core of it. And so you see it a lot in athletes. I see it a lot in athletes. I see it a lot in people coming out of challenging environments where, you're a kid growing up in a tough environment. Christianity is a real port in a storm. So to build off that and recognize their Christian faith as a strength for all of us and to build off that and expand it. It's so great to see these kids witnessing to what the impact that Christ has had in their life. It's really cool to see.
So we know one team wins, one team loses. How do you prepare the players for things like this?
I never prepare kids to lose. But I do help them figure out what to do if they do lose, but we prepare to win at every circumstance. So it is really I think what Christianity has taught me is that the world, it's both and, right? And so you prepare for the best outcome, but when the worst happens, there's another play, right? And you keep moving on. And that really is, it really is the Christian message. We're supposed to have the optimism to know that how it's going to end, but recognize that we have bad moments and we have bad days and bad stuff happens. And sometimes it's horrible. It's unspeakable. But there's another day and there's another, and that's what your faith, that's what Christianity promises all of us. And so there's lessons. And it's not like you miss a block and I go, Jesus died so you could block better, son. No, but there's moments where you capture that and you just make those lessons that they hear sometimes in the locker room or in Sunday school, you make them real for them on the field. And those are the kind of lessons that I tapped on. Fortunately, I had people in my life do that. So it's a real cool opportunity.
Certainly, these are lifelong lessons. We're learning the game of life, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, retirement marks a significant transition in life. But what does the Bible say about it? Well, we will talk with our Morning Light Good Money contributor and the psychology of retirement. We talk with a Christian counselor for tips on how to cope with this new season of life. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Well, it was 1905 when it was a rather bloody year in American college football. Cheating and rioting and brutal play and the death of 18 players triggered calls for reforms or the outright abolition of the game. President Teddy Roosevelt saw the root of the issue was actually character. Coaches were teaching players how to cheat, and the results were deadly. The president won rule changes and saved football and the lives of generations of players. Thank you, TR. Well, look, the presence of so many followers of Christ, Christians, on and off the field, in and around college and professional football should mean something. You saw that on display in major ways all throughout the game last night. More sportsmanship? That's what it should mean to be a Christian in sports. More humility, more dependence on God. I think Teddy Roosevelt saw football as a metaphor for life. Of course, he said, don't flinch, don't foul, hit the line hard. That's all part of the game. But it's really what happens after the game and before the game, the kind of infusing of Christian character that takes the intensity of the game and says, hey, life is actually bigger than games like the Super Bowl. And with that idea, you can change the world. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching. Go check on your neighbors, and God willing, we'll see you right back here tomorrow morning.